Thank you, Alex. Great, that's forward, okay. So all those things are great, but I don't know if you guys all caught it. I just got engaged to Alan DePonsier. Did you hear that back there? I'm very proud of myself. It really doesn't matter how the rest of this goes now. Thank you very much, Alan. It was real touching. So yeah, Rory Capern, thank you very much for having me. I understand this is the first MarketingTO. Very honored to be here, speaking to a very large room in a very beautiful office. So thanks to Top Hat again for housing us tonight. I'll also tell you, as Alex did, I'm a free agent right now, and that's pretty awesome because it means that I get to speak to a group like you without a comms person in the back telling me what I can and can't say. I've had a whole lot of time to put this presentation together, which is also new for me, and I hope what's coming is interesting to you. So my lead was blown a little bit with this one, but June 12, 1987, I will not embarrass myself and ask how many of you were born on that day, but Ronald Reagan said to Mikhail Gorbachev, tear the wall down between Eastern and Western Germany. And it was a momentous occasion in history. I'm not a huge Reagan fan. I don't work at Twitter anymore. I don't have to answer questions about American presidents, but I've got one in the very opening of my presentation. What's important about this is I'm going to ask the room tonight, in the spirit of colliding between technology and marketing and advertising, to tear down a couple of pretty big walls that I've been noticing in my career over the course of the past 5 years or 10 years. And some of them are controversial. So hopefully we'll get some good questions. So this is me over the last 10 years. I've worked for Microsoft and Google and Twitter. The logos on the bottom of that slide are really important too. It's to tell you that I was proudly and fiercely an ad tech guy before it was cool. I was at Microsoft selling Atlas like 8 years ago, and that was painful, but I love it. And I'm here tonight to talk about how all that sort of evolved. How many of you have heard of Wanamaker's dilemma? Right, this is this super famous quote. I know that I'm wasting half my budget, I just don't know which half. We've been hard at work. Wanamaker was a very, very successful retailer in the early 1900s, one of the forefathers of advertising. And this challenge has not really been solved yet, right? And I think what we're looking for in the context of the marketing and technology space is the solve. We have a lot of folks in the AI marketing world right now claiming to have the solve. I think it's bullshit so far. We have a lot of work to do before we can actually make that claim. But I'm here in a room of people who are very motivated, I think, to make it happen. And I think this group together, these three different solitudes, coming together and tearing some walls down has a really significant chance of making it happen. God, I hate these slides, right? Like, they're designed on purpose to be super, super difficult to read. What I want to focus on, though, is not all the stupid little logos, because clearly it's a very busy space. It's the walls between the logos, right? Like, the most prominent part of this slide are these little white lines that, like, rigidly divide all these different areas. And that, folks, in my opinion, is the problem that I wanted to talk about tonight. So, I saw some hands go up. Alex asked at the beginning, how many in advertising, how many in marketing, how many in tech? How many of you are in sales? Damn it, I was hoping you would do better than that. You are all in sales. If you're in marketing, you're here to sell stuff. And we forget this all the time. Right, Alan talked to us about tofu back there. That was really cool. I didn't know that was a thing in marketing until 15 minutes ago. But the point of marketing, whether it's long game or short game, it's all for sales, right? Over different time spans, right? So those of you who are really into branding, usually say that with a long A. The branding people, they like to talk early in the product cycle, right? We're going to introduce people to things and teach them that it's there, and then we're going to talk to people at the very bottom, the BOFU, right? Bottom of the funnel. That's to sell stuff, right? But it's all to sell stuff. All this stuff is to sell stuff, and we forget this. Horrible things happen. Like really, really bad things that we've been talking about in digital for a really long time, right? Like waste, like a lot of waste. How many of you are buying on impressions? How many of you, put your hands up, are buying on impressions? Don't you lie to me. How many people are doing it? You're all doing it all the time. And it creates a ton of waste. Click fraud, bot farms, all these things happen because we're not focused on sales, right? When you spend your money for an outcome and it doesn't happen at the end, something went wrong. We're not always tracking it. We don't have the tools to measure it. And it's because we have these walls up. I'm going to get to those now. So, if you take one thing away tonight, the message that I have for the collision of marketing and advertising and technology is that we have to think more in an integrated way. That big, huge, confusing slide without any white lines in it. Right? We're all in this together. We're all trying to sell shit. That's what we're here for. right? Whether you're a MarTech provider or an ad tech provider, and I'm gonna rail about that in a second, we're all doing this together to meet an objective for guys like Alan who need to sell checking accounts and do really important things for banks. Not walls, right? These are not things that are divided and different. So, wall number one. I can't tell you how long I've been waiting to do this, right? Wall number one. Okay? There's no wall, none, between performance and brand. It's just time, right? When I speak to you, and I'm Alex, the agencies have been taking a bit of a beating tonight, but it's going to keep going for a little while. There's like 2 separate books of money. Well, what's that going to come from? Is it going to come from my performance budget? Or is it going to come from my brand budget? Well, do you want to sell shit or not? Right? There's no wall here. Brand supports performance. They work together, right? The answer is on the far right side. And we all talk about attribution. Who talks about attribution? Yeah. Now, who does attribution? First of all, it was a remarkably small number of hands that went up. Who talks about attribution? Okay, there's the problem. See this wall. Who does attribution? Who buys with an attribution model and like really does? And I'm going to ask you later if you keep your hand up. So, all right, we got 1, 2 people who are actually, Alan, I was waiting for you. Thanks, pal. Who are using attribution. Attribution is the way that we measure the efficacy of everything that we buy. And we do it in digital. And that means that there can be no wall. I know I'm going to get a debate about this later, but there is no wall in an attributed world. All you're trying to figure out is when I bought X, what happened to Y? And to truly understand that interrelationship is to win in marketing. And none of us are doing it well. The technology exists. There's a lot of work left in building that technology, but it's there. And we can use it today. We talk about it, and it's really sexy, and it sounds very sophisticated in vendor meetings. But we don't do it. We have to take down this wall. Okay, another one of my favorites. This is also an agency thing, although it exists everywhere. The wall between creative and media. In digital, this is ridiculous. And it's kind of way too far for way too long. Right? We have these 2 solitudes. We have these genius people who think of brilliant ideas and create beautiful art, and this thing gets thrown over the wall to the media team who then have to plan around it. And those who are doing really well in the media space, the ones who have like, 200-300 salespeople in their offices, they're able to go upstream. And they go talk to the creative agencies and say, hey, let's sell to them because what they do actually drives the media plan. And everybody pretends that this wall exists, and it doesn't exist. Right? Really successful campaigns tie creative and media together. They interoperate. They're integrated. And I'm going to come back to that in a sec. 3, MarTech and ad tech. Again, I love these terms, right? I've been around long enough now. It's been like 20 years. All these new terms come in, and everybody sort of wears their business. Yeah, I'm in MarTech. I'm an ad tech. No, you're not, right? You're not. You are a data-driven marketer. You're using data to drive outcomes. Ad tech, you might argue, based on that ridiculously complicated slide, is a subset of MarTech. It's all marketing technology, but really, it's not none of that. It's just data. We can do so much more with data. In the very beginning, in my beginning, about 15 years ago, the conversations were, how do we get this data? There wasn't very much data. And then the advertisers came to the table and sort of puffed their chest out of it and said, yeah, I got a lot of data. I don't need your data. I got the data. I'm going to use my data and buy the inventory, and that's how it's going to go. And then they all started to compete, and they realized that they were leaving all this value on the table. There's all kinds of data. Some of it's advertiser data, some of it's publisher data, some of it comes from a third-party source. There's so much work to do here. And we don't get at it because of these walls. Right? We think about ad tech as being separate from MarTech, and we have all these players. Who here sells for a MarTech or ad tech company? Yeah, there you are. I was waiting for you. How you doing, man? This is hard, right? This is tough. The ability to bring all this data together puts companies in a really difficult place. Those who do it well, those who integrate data and use it to maximum benefit, are driving the best results in the market, bar none. Danielle, is that true? Right, thank you. She said yes. Really important. Another massive wall that needs to be taken down. So, what I'm asking for this evening, as we talk to the first MarketingTO event and collide these 3 areas, is integrative thinking, right? The adjective, serving or intending to unify separate things. So please, let's stop talking about these things as disconnected. They're actually totally required for each part of the chain to be successful. Whether you're a buyer or a seller, the ability to think in an integrative way, to use all of this technology, to figure out how it all interoperates, is where we have to go if we're going to continue to drive better results. So, that's my piece. Thank you very much. Break the wall.
So Rory, isn't it great to not have to be a politician?
So good.
So great to not have to be a politician. Okay, great presentation. So, questions for Rory? Oh, nope. Okay, hold on. There's one up here. Yeah, so Michael's going to grab it.
Thank you. Hey Roy, my name is Susan. I actually heard your presentation last year when you were still working at Twitter at
Way more boring, wasn't it?
At the digital marketing class. So this is way more interesting, way more fun. So since nobody's asking questions, so do you mind share a little bit about your experience at Twitter, what's happening? I'm sure everybody wanted to know, just nobody's asking.
Sure. Do you like my experience in general at Twitter, or is there anything specific that you wanted to know?
I'm curious how the performance is going, and what's your take on all the politics going on with Twitter? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, this is a bit of a loaded question. I got a couple of questions before the event about that one. Look, what's going on at Twitter right now is remarkable. It's an incredibly inspiring company. Twitter is trying to offer users in the world the best tool for real-time news. So what's going on in the world right now? And I think one of the most important lessons I learned at Twitter was the outcome of a very different philosophy in social, right? So in 2016, I took on the role, and what I saw, having been obviously paying a lot of attention, was that year I'm a very heavy Facebook user as well. In 2016, Facebook showed me the world the way I wanted it to be, the way I wanted it to look, right? That happened to have been a very important time around elections. I was totally surprised by the outcome of that election based on what all my friends were saying. Twitter showed me the way the world really is, right? Warts and all. And when you give the world a microphone, you don't always like what you hear, but you get a very important perspective on what actually is happening out there. So to me, that basic value proposition is extremely important. And listen, it's not easy, right? So last week there was a protest. There's a lot of questions around policy and its enforcement. The challenge that Twitter and other social media companies are going through right now is they're walking a really important line between freedom of speech, which I will die for, and safety, which I will also die for. Right? It's a very, very hard line to walk, right? So this is not easy work. It's a very, very, very noble cause, in my opinion. One of the reasons why I lent 2 years of my life to manage the company in Canada. Extraordinarily passionate about what the mission is, and I wish them all the best in terms of what's going forward.
More questions? Right. Hi, Rory. My name is Phil. I'm a student at George Brown, and I'm studying marketing. And one of the things I looked up the field is how data can tell us a story.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, kind of, what your opinion was. What's like the biggest problem, facing people in analytics, and like how they can incorporate that into their marketing strategies?
Sure. The answer is changing. A year ago, I would have told you that we actually don't have the computing power necessary to get to the answers that we need to get to. That's changed, right? So we actually happen to be living in a country that's pushing the envelope in terms of the technology that we need to get there. What's happening in the worlds of deep learning and machine learning and artificial intelligence have actually changed a lot of my answer. So to me, the old answer used to be there's just all this data, how do we synthesize it all and get to meaningful answers? That's no longer the problem, thankfully. Right? It's a massive breakthrough. If I was a student right now, I would be beelining for that space. It's going to change everything. The challenge today is getting signal from noise. Right, so now we can process all the information, but we have to determine what matters. And that's a really difficult question to answer when you get behind the dashboard of a marketing campaign. Why are you doing what you're doing? What is a successful result, and how do you measure it? Sounds really easy. Those are 3 simple little questions, but to get to the bottom of that and to understand it at its root is incredibly hard. So we need thinking marketers who are analysts. That's a very, very tough combo, but I think we can get there. Cool?
Last question.
Hi, Brian Stanton from Say Media. First of all, I just want to say really inspiring talk. Love it, couldn't agree more. Obviously, there's a lot of work to be done. One of the things you mentioned was the divide between creative and advertising.
Yeah.
What do you think about some of the initiatives like the Greenhouse team bringing the and partnership and concept media together to sort of bridge some of that divide. And why do you think it's so difficult for a lot of agencies that have these components built in to be able to capture 100% of a client's business so they can integrate it properly?
So I'd actually like Danielle to answer this question because I think she'd have a more interesting answer than I would. But
Okay.
I think that's an important example, right? So there's a case where the walls are being intentionally collapsed, but I think the problem is speed and understanding, right? So you could put those two businesses in a room, but the question is, without media at the core of creative and without creative at the core of media, you get this disconnect, right? Where there's a bunch of back and forth and iterations and it all costs time. Danielle doesn't have that time. She's got 2 weeks, right? So I think that's the problem. The fact that we have these two businesses that have been put together is a great first step. They shouldn't have been two different businesses in the first place, right? And until we can actually aggregate those two roles into one, we're not solving the problem. We're just making it easier to work faster, I think. That answer your question? Okay.
Awesome. So I'm going to have one last one.
Thanks, Rory.
Yes.
Great presentation. My question is, I agree with everything you're saying. The question, what role, who's going to fix this? Is it going to be the clients that have to put the tension into the system to force this collaboration and break down these silos? What role do the vendors play? I'm just curious on your perspective.
So I think it starts with your answer, actually. So the first is demanding clients. Some of the best work I've seen in Canada in the last 5 years had 3 vicious competitors at the same table, answering really hard questions from very large spending brands like yours. Right? So demanding the ability to put these solutions together, and they don't have to be competing media vendors, they can be competing or not competing tech providers. I think the smart question, if I could be so bold as to suggest it to the CMO of RBC, is how can you guys deliver a better result together? Don't try and shepherd the answer yourself, just ask the question and keep them accountable, and don't let them come out of the room until they have something that you're happy with. It's not happening enough. That's the exception, it's not the rule. And I think as a result, the conversations become very fractious and everybody's trying to win share of your business, where what they need to understand is that they're all part of a chain. The objective is to create a bigger link in the chain and not to break it. Right? And I think that's part of the issue that we're dealing with here.
That's great. I totally agree. I think unless the clients put tension in the system, people would naturally go to their silos.
Yeah.
Unless we force them to kind of
Or
play
they just
together.
try and fight for more of your budget, right?
Yeah,
Which is
exactly.
not an optimal.
That never happens.
And it's about outcomes, and I think you are driving that, so hold them accountable. Thank you so much, that was amazing. Okay, so